you think Fiskars is the dominant in rotary. If you had to pick like
Yes.
a second and a third, who would be the people at the top of your mind?
I think the one that's probably closest to being second is probably Exacto. And they probably do most of their volume, though, in the office supply area, rather than over in the crafting area. But they do a lot of volume with the Exacto brand. And then after that, it just is really fragmented as far as I could tell. Yeah.
Did Olfa seem like a strong?
Yeah, they came. They came and went. They've been after us a bunch on cutting pads, and and even at that, they've not been able to make a huge dent in anything. They got into the deal at Walmart a few years ago, where they were going to do a whole bunch of volume. This new buyer said, if you can get me this price and this margin, I can do this much business. Well, it turned out she couldn't do that much business in 5 years, but they bought the material.
Right.
And some of those segments just aren't big no matter what. They're just kind of what they are. And I think a lot of retailers get snookered into thinking that this is a sleepy little category. If somebody revives it, you can make it do a lot more volume, and it just doesn't work that way.
Okay. Let's see. What sort of did you do many studies or understand what sort of walk rates retailers saw when they shifted volume to another brand or another away from Fiskars?
Well, yes. Actually, several years ago, maybe 6 years ago, Walmart replaced Fiskars and Westcott both in the office supply aisle. Where there's not a lot of scissors, but there's some there. And they went strictly with a generic private label, if you will. And within 2 years, they had lost 38% of the units. And besides the 38% of the units, because they'd taken their price down, they wound up losing 63% of the dollar volume. And so they've been in the process of bringing brands back into that segment. But, that particular buyer, and that's the same senior VP that I used to have some deals with. I've known a long time, a guy named Terry Price is in charge of hard lines at Walmart. He just can't get it through his head that brand really matters in some of those segments. The consumer is looking for something that they're not going to have to repurchase. You don't mind paying $9 for a Fiskars scissor versus $5 for a Westcott if you know you're never going to have to buy it again.
Yeah. So when you were negotiating with places like retailers, well, when they think that they can go private, like what sort of how are you able to convince them otherwise, or where do you think, looking
sometimes
back, maybe you missed the mark.
Yeah. Well, I'll give you an example. Maybe 10, 11 years ago, Walmart decided to get into private or controlled label on scissors for fabrics. And they offered Fiskars the opportunity to manufacture those scissors for them, make it under their label and to their standards. Right. And at the time, Fiskars was only going to make about 46 points of margin on that. And that was way below the company average for scissors. And they passed on it. Well, lo and behold, I say 10, that may have been 12 years ago. That's basically what wound up putting Westcott in business. Westcott, for all practical purposes, didn't exist.